The fact is that the removal of Title 42 does not mean the border is open.
Proud of the fact that with a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate, we were able to achieve, through this omnibus spending bill, essentially all of our priorities.
Thank you. I may be Irish, but I'm not stupid. I married Dominic Giacoppa's daughter, so, I got a little Italian in me now,
Freedom is back in style. Welcome to the revolution.
Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Sean Hannity. The new Sean Hannity Show. More behind-the-scenes information on breaking news and more bold, inspired solutions for America.
This is Louie Gohmert sitting in for Sean Hannity, the Sean Hannity Show, and we're going to get right to it. We have Mark Morgan, the former acting Customs and Border Patrol Commissioner and Heritage Visiting Fellow. We've got Tom Homan, former acting ICE Director and Heritage Visiting Fellow. And I hope that this doesn't destroy their credibility, but they're also friends of mine. I don't know if they'll admit that on national radio, but I think the world of these guys, and that's demonstrated where when we get together, we're giving each other a hard time and not cutting each other any slack. But these are guys, they know about the border. They know about border security, and they've seen it work, and they've seen it not work. Mark, Tom, welcome to the Sean Hannity Show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Louie. And you know what? I'm proud to call you a friend, Louie.
Oh, good. Wow, on national radio. I'm thrilled. Well, look, guys, so you saw the big news. The Supreme Court is saying we're going to hold Title 42 in place. But, Mark, I was just seeing an article where you made the outrageous statement that, gee, the Biden administration hadn't been enforcing it anyway.
That's right, Louie. There's two important things. With or without Title 42, we are and have been in the midst of the worst catastrophic self-inflicted border security crisis in our lifetime. The past 2 years, again, with Title 42 in place, we've seen over 6 million encounters and gotaways. A part of that 6 million, again, historic highs, 1.2 million gotaways. Among the gotaways are criminals, national security threats. We know that we've had unprecedented number of drugs getting across the border, not being seized, killing Americans every single day. We could go on and on. So make no mistake, even if Title 42 stays in place, we are still in the midst of an unmitigated catastrophe along our southwest border. And the second thing that I'll say to this is Title 42 is not a border security tool, authority, or policy. It's not. It's a public health policy. And so that's why I'm so infuriated, with all due respect, that the Republicans participated in the passage of the omnibus bill, that all it did was throw millions more, a couple of billion at DHS, not to secure the border, but to continue to just cover up the crisis they've created.
Yeah, and one of the things that some of us found before the vote, and we were pointing out to others, you've got sections there of money going for border security and to hire more agents, but then there was a provision that specifically said this money cannot be used to secure the border. I mean, it's so outrageous what they are doing. Tom, you heard Mark. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, me and Mark are in 100% agreement. And Title 42, we got to remember, Title 42 was not a game changer. Title 42 certainly helps Border Patrol, and now staying in place, it will help them a little bit more, because if they would have lifted it, there would have been more crossing the border. And 70, 80, 90% of agents are already off the line dealing with this crisis, processing people. So they would have pulled more agents off the line, which means more fentanyl gets in here that kills Americans, more sex trafficking, women and children. It's more vulnerable to known suspected terrorists when there's nobody patrolling the border. But to be clear, Title 42 under President Trump and Mark was there, they removed over 80% of everybody. Under Biden, if you look at the data in the CBP website, they've actually released more people into the U.S. than they returned under Title 42. And I've said for weeks, I'm sick and tired of the secretaries and saying, it's a court decision, it's a CDC thing. Yeah, I get it. But if you really want to secure the border, Mr. Secretary, The federal courts have said to remain in Mexico is legal. You can re-implement that today, and that was a game changer in the Trump administration. If you really want to give the Border Patrol relief, if you really want to secure the border like you keep saying you want to do, prove it. Put the remain in Mexico back in.
Well, you got Mayorkas that says, no, it's already secured. We've secured the border. We had a caller a while ago from Amarillo, Texas, saying, we got drug cartels set up here in the panhandle of Texas. Isn't that appropriate to understand that there are cartels that are setting up in cities all over the country?
Yeah, Louie, I'll tell you what,
I'll let Mark answer that.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
sorry, Tom, didn't mean to cut it. Yeah, so Lou, you're absolutely right. That's one of the false narratives that this administration and open border advocates are just simply lying to the American people about. The Mexican cartels don't just operate in Mexico, and they don't even operate in the entire Western Hemisphere. Well, they do, but that's not it. They're also in the United States. That's how they're able to fulfill their criminal operation, is because they do have an extension and they operate in the United States. And look, the secretary you mentioned, this is why I call Secretary Mayorkas the most dangerous man in this in the Biden administration, because not only is he the chief architect of the current dangerous and deadly open border policies, but he's lying to the American people. I mean, look, when he tells the American people that our border's secure and that our borders are closed, I think the American people can see with their own eyes. All we have to look at is a couple of statistics. One, 1.2 million gotaways. Those are illegal aliens because, as Tom said, 70, 80, 90% of Border Patrol resources are pulled off the line. They're relegated to being a federal travel agency as they process millions of illegal aliens. And what happens to the gotaways? That's where criminals are getting through, potential national security threats, and drugs. No, Mr. Secretary, you're lying to the American people. Our borders are not closed.
Yeah, well, Tom...
on that, saying I'm disappointed, I'm disgusted with the 18 Republican senators that voted for the omnibus bill, because many of them have been down to the border doing their dog and pony shows, saying, hey, this is a terrible thing. We got to do something about the Biden administration. It's reckless, and we got more fentanyl and gang members and criminals coming across the border, and this administration is doing nothing. Why no 18 Republican senators that did nothing? Because they voted for the omnibus bill that didn't give a single dollar to border security.
Well, not only that, it gave up our leverage to try to force the administration to do something about it.
Absolutely.
I know, we've talked about it individually before about Article 4, Section 4. The United States government guarantees that they'll protect the states, each state, from invasion. And I know y'all know your history back 1916 when Pancho Villa came across with some folks around New Mexico, and there were Americans killed. Heck, that was dozens, as I understand it, and yet you've got millions, and I don't know of any specific definition on what an invasion is, but it's got to be somewhere short of 1 million, and you guys are talking about millions, not just a million, but millions of people just since Biden has been in office. I've been advocating, see what you think, I've been advocating that since they didn't keep their guarantee, and yes, we know the Supreme Court has said only the federal government can enforce the immigration laws, but when it comes to an invasion, every state should have the right to stop it. Our governor in Texas, Governor Abbott, has declared an invasion. He's got National Guards. But the trouble that I see is once somebody gets across the border and puts their feet on U.S. soil, now they're U.S. immigrants. They get to be heard on whether they're claiming asylum and all that stuff, and the federal government has that responsibility. I think that a state has the obligation and the right to say, you are not crossing into our state. We'll use non-lethal means, but you are not going to step foot on our soil. What do you think?
Yeah, look, so thanks, Tom. Look, Lou, you're absolutely right. And Tom, again, I think we're tracking on this. I think let's be clear, and I've said this, I'm going to continue to say this. Governor Abbott has done more than any other governor in this country to fill the void left by this administration's abdication of their constitutional responsibility that you just described to protect the states from threats from outside our borders. This administration has failed the constitutional duty. Now, in the Constitution, as you just described, there's a state self-help remedy when the federal government fails to protect the state, and that's what Governor Abbott has done. He's availed himself. And look, it's not just an invasion of the millions of actual illegal aliens. This is being driven by the cartels. So it's a declaration of war against the cartels, and it's not just an invasion of people. It's an invasion of criminals, as Tom said. It's an invasion of drugs. It's an invasion of potential national security threats. That's what the governor has done. The one thing that he hasn't done that you described, look, U.S. v. Arizona is very clear, as you stated. States cannot enforce federal immigration law. But when the governor declares an invasion under the constitutional self-help remedy, he's not enforcing federal immigration law. He's actually taking the steps necessary to protect his state or her state from an invasion. Mm-hmm. And that means what he needs to do, the one thing he hasn't done yet, is detain and remove illegal aliens. Once he starts removing, and as you said, prevent them from illegally entering, you're going to see the numbers go down. Now, look, there's a very real issue about potential personal liability attaching to the guardsmen or the troopers that do this. I know they're working through that right now, but until the governor does, as you said, prevent them from entering and removing, this crisis is going to continue.
Yeah. Tom?
I agree with Mark 100%. And Mark's actually worked a lot with FAIR in this issue. And I know Mark's met with the Texas AG and a few others. And, Carrie Lake was going to do it. Matter of fact, I went out and met with Carrie Lake before the election. I gave her my commitment that me and Mark would both go out there and run it for her. We with his experience and my experience, we said, look, we'll work with your DPS, we'll work with your National Guard, and we'll help you enforce laws on your southern border. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, she's not declared a winner, so Katie Hobbs would never do it. But look, bottom line is this: now that we got the House, now the Republicans got the House, they need to have oversight hearings. They need to impeach Mayorkas. I'm not backing off that. They need to impeach Mayorkas on day one. At a minimum, they need to have oversight hearings because, Louie, if they subpoena the right people, if they subpoena the right information, and me and Mark stand ready, we'll be witness 1 and 2. We'll show them and tell them where to get the information they're looking for because we've been around a while. If they subpoena the right people, subpoena the right information, there's going to be a lot of damning information about Secretary Mayorkas and these NGOs that are conspiring with them. And you got, 24 Democrats running for re-election in 2024. Once they hear the evidence that they cannot deny, they got to pick a side because they're up for a tough re-election. So I'm hoping when they're presented with evidence they can't ignore, then they'll be on our side on securing that border or they're going to risk re-election.
Well, I keep thinking that, but the evidence is overwhelming, and yet they are still sticking their head somewhere where they don't see what's going on. By the way, I've wondered, by the way Joe Biden has acted as president, do we have any clues about where the hair he got transplanted on top of his head may have come from? Well, it's just a thought. But anyway, you guys, one quick question, too. It's clear that when you release these people that are illegally immigrating and say, come back in 4 years, they don't come back. And what I have thought we should do, and you guys would know firsthand, if we put immigration judges on the border, whether it's intense or whatever we got to do, and say, you're not leaving this area until you have your hearing, and let's get those people their immediate hearing that the Supreme Court says they get, and 90-something% of them will be immediately taken across the border after their hearing, right?
Yeah. Louie, look, we were already doing that. We were doing that under the Trump administration. That was the genesis of the Remain in Mexico program.
Gotcha.
We pushed all those resources down. We brought judge-ins via video teleconference. We did it all electronically and virtually, and it was extremely effective. But here's the most important thing. Once we have that system and we were not releasing them in the United States,
they quit coming.
That's exactly
exactly.
2020, we reduced illegal immigration by 85%.
Well, you guys are American heroes. Thank you.
The reason it makes sense, Louie, if I could real quick.
Sure.
The Syracuse University track just did a study. They looked at the rocket docket. All these family units came across since Joe Biden became president. Those that have been adjudicated. 93% lost their case were ordered removed.
Right.
Only 7%. And how many of those order removed that 93% have left the country? How many have ICE arrested? Zero.
Wow. Well, guys, thank you for coming on. Thank you for shedding light. Thanks for being American heroes. This is the Sean Hannity Show. This is Louie Gohmert sitting in. Thanks to Mark Morgan and Tom Homan. They are heroes. We'll be right back.
If you're ready to get out of the media spin room, you've come to the right place. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
This is Louie Gohmert sitting in for Sean Hannity, the Sean Hannity Show. And let's go to Preston in Alabama. What's on your mind, Preston? We got about a minute or so. Yeah.
I got just real frustrated, old jarhead. I'm just going to ask the question, what difference does it make anyway? Bill got in trouble, was impeached, nothing ever happened. Hillary killed a bunch of military men, got in trouble, nothing ever happened. The FBI, DOJ lied up and down backwards about Trump. Nothing ever happened. We know Hunter and old Joe have been involved in as many crooked things as you could possibly imagine. Nothing ever happened. Why are we doing the dog and pony show when we know nothing's going to happen?
Well, that's just it. If we don't start making things happen for the injustices being created by the other side, then this country is done. And I'm not giving up hope, Preston. We have got to do that, and that's going to start. We actually need to bring in some judges to have them testify, subpoena them to the Judiciary Committee in the House, because it's controlled by Republicans beginning January 3rd. And let's start asking those kind of questions. Why are they acting unconstitutionally? Why do they believe in punishing in pretrial confinement, even though that's unconstitutional? Why have these people gotten away with things? We need to bring in lots of people to have them testify, show accountability. We can't give up hope, Preston. We just can't. We got to keep pushing. This is Louie Gohmert in for Sean Hannity, the Sean Hannity Show.
You'll hear what everyone really thinks in D.C. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
This is the Sean Hannity Show. This is Louie Gohmert sitting in for Sean. And I've got a guest with us, Alex Berenson. Hope he doesn't mind my mentioning. He was formerly with the New York Times back when there were some reporters at the Times that were really trying to dig out for the truth. He has been trying to do that for some years, and I would like to welcome Alex Berenson to the Sean Hannity Show. Alex, welcome, man. Thank you for all the work you have done. You've not only done incredible homework, but you have also gone to the courts to get to the truth of the matters, and particularly with regard to Twitter. And if I can say this right off, to me, as a historian, one of the greatest developments in the history of medicine was this idea of informed consent, that apparently it was only about 100 years ago that you had a better chance of getting well after seeing a doctor instead of getting worse. And so you look how far we've gone, and this idea that in America you should have informed consent, where a physician, healthcare provider will advise you of the risks inherent to whatever, the shot, the procedure, whatever, and then get your agreement. But that seems to have taken a back seat to the hysteria, as you've called it in your book, Pandemia, How Coronavirus Hysteria Took Over Our Government Rights and Lives. Amazing work you've done, Alex, and I'm grateful for it. Welcome to the Sean Hannity Show.
Well,
Congressman, thank you so much for having me.
Now, well, tell us, you've gotten discovery through the courts in your suit against Twitter. What does that reveal? Let folks know.
I sued Twitter last year after Twitter banned me in August 2021 for a tweet that about the mRNA vaccines that began, "It doesn't stop infection or transmission," which I think everyone in the world, even Anthony Fauci, would agree with at this point.
Well, I don't think you could count on Fauci agreeing with anything.
That's true. He probably wouldn't agree that the sky is blue,
right. Especially if Rand Paul asked him, but otherwise. but yeah, thank you. President Biden had said it will stop the transmission. It will stop you from getting it. Most people understand, well, no, that's not actually happening. And you just happened to reveal that inconvenient truth a little too soon for some people.
Yes. So we were in the middle of this argument over whether we needed boosters and whether we needed mandates, and I was pretty forcefully speaking out against both boosters and mandates. And by the way, I said last year in 2021, hey, if you're at high risk for COVID, probably getting vaccinated makes sense. I don't think it makes sense if you're at lower risk, but if you're at high risk, it probably makes sense for you based on the data that we have. And so I was not one of these people who was saying, oh, the vaccine is going to turn your blood green and make you, jump off a building. I tried to take a measured stance. But when the vaccines began to fail last summer, in the summer of 2021, as they clearly were, and when there was this rush to try to get people to take a third shot, which had not been tested really in any meaningful way, I spoke out against that. And I definitely said, you know what, it is wrong to tell people that they need to do this at the risk of their jobs, at the risk of their education, that you have to choose, if you live in New York State where I did what I did and do, you have to choose between going to a restaurant and being vaccinated against your will. And all those things, I thought were very wrong. And so for my, for speaking out, I was censored. I was banned from Twitter. I sued Twitter. And in the discovery, which now has been corroborated by what people call the Twitter files, which is what Elon Musk has released since buying Twitter,
right.
It is clear that the Biden administration wanted me off Twitter and pressured Twitter very hard last year in 2021 to push me off. And that, to me, is a violation of my First Amendment rights. I do intend to sue. I've now settled my suit with Twitter, and I'm back on the platform. That was before Elon took over. They had to let me back on because they didn't want to go through discovery and sort of admit what was really going on. But so they did let me back on. But now I'm going to sue the White House, and I'm going to sue a guy named Andy Slavitt, who was at the White House when this effort to censor me started. And I'm going to sue Pfizer, too. And the reason I'm going to sue Pfizer is that a board member at Pfizer named Scott Gottlieb, who used to be the head of the FDA, you sort of talk about the swamp and regulatory capture. This guy went from the FDA. He quit. 3 months later, he joined. Literally 3 months later, he joined the board of Pfizer. And in August 2021, when Twitter had not yet banned me, although they were under a lot of pressure from the White House to do so and clearly feeling that pressure, he went to Twitter and said, you got to basically, I don't know exactly what he said yet, but he said that my writing was a security risk to Tony Fauci. And Twitter basically banned me immediately. So all those people, as far as I'm concerned, violated my First Amendment rights, and I'm going to sue them all. And I have something called a Substack, which is an independent newsletter platform that's very anti-censorship. I've been able to write there, but really being off Twitter for a year at this crucial moment when the vaccines were, being pushed for a third shot and the mandates were being pushed, to me, that's time I'll never get back, and it was an intentional suppression of my right to free speech. Yeah, right. And in fact, thank you for mentioning Substack. You have the Unreported Truths blog on Substack, and in addition to being the author of the Pandemia. But, you had the worst of all worlds. You had the government, you had social media, and you had Big Pharma in the front, all coming after you. So
you could have been paranoid, but all of those groups really were out to get you.
Right.
And so I love the fact that you've stood up on this stuff. And coming back again, look, to me, people should have the chance to get the vaccination, but just tell people what the risks are and let them make that decision. Here's what the risks are. Here's what potential benefits are. And let's be truthful about those and let people make their own decisions. And that's where the title of your book points out, the hysteria allowed the government to combine with social media and the corporate world to silence people. So,
yes. And there was a very real, remember 2020, the hysteria that the media was whipping up, in part to get, Donald Trump out of office because it was real. And so then they needed an answer. And they said, hey, these vaccines are the answer. And, the worst part was that, the most ironic part was that for a few months in early 2021, it seemed like the vaccines really were the answer. We had this brief moment when cases went way down, when deaths went way down. And unfortunately, it turned out that like a lot of pharmaceutical products, these vaccines, and we really shouldn't even call them vaccines because they don't confer anything like permanent immunity. These shots only worked for a short period of time. And no one was willing to admit, you know what, like, they're just not what they appeared to be in the clinical trials. And that became, I think we're still dealing with that. I think the inability to reckon with the disappointment of the vaccines has pushed us to a really bad place.
Well, and your situation also points out, once again, there is a problem with people that have worked officially in the government going to like the Pfizer Big Pharma board, and vice versa. There is a conflict of interest there that is really a threat to people's constitutional rights. And your situation illustrates that about as clearly as I've ever seen. And in fact, wasn't it 2021? I think even National Review, that used to be so solidly conservative, they were coming after you because they said, look, here we've got this vaccination that may allow us to get rid of lockdowns and all these other freedom-taking things. And here's this guy, Berenson, that's out there saying these are bad.
Yep. That's right. And to me, and I say this in pandemia, the answer wasn't to, force vaccines. The answer was just to go back to normal to begin with, because this virus was never, it was never Ebola. It was never HIV. It was always in the, maybe it was worse than the flu. I think we can agree in 2020 it looked worse than the flu, but it wasn't something to shut society down for. And that was the first mistake. And so you mentioned National Review. Here's how crazy it got. In September 2021, early September 2021, the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, published an op-ed in the New York Times saying, we favor vaccine mandates. This is an organization that has civil liberties in the title.
Yeah,
this is how lost we got.
Exactly.
The right and the left, they both got lost.
Well, and they continue to lose their way, and it's become one-sided. They, at one time, they were out for civil liberties, number one, period, exclamation point. But now that it all depends on which side the politics are. And what I've appreciated about you, you're not as concerned about politics as you are just freedom, liberty.
Yep. That's right. And by the way, I know you and I don't agree on everything, and I sometimes write things on my Substack that makes my readers very angry, especially if I write about Trump. I don't agree with my readers about Trump. And you know what? That's fine. That's America. Like, we should be all allowed to express our views. And this idea that I said something that should get me banned from Twitter is insane. It's just wrong.
Oh, it is. And my communications people have been saying for a long time that, I got shadow banned. I had not been listed as one that was, but they said, my Twitter just went to nothing, and that had to have been what happened. But anyway, you have taken a stand and for liberty. Look, Jonathan Turley, I think the world of him, Alan Dershowitz, and we disagree on most things political, but I love their concern for liberty, for freedom. And, heck, I was deacon of a Baptist church back in Texas, and some people would say, look, we all got to be of the same opinion. And I would quote a preacher from 1950 before I was even born. He said, if two people agree on everything, one of them unnecessary. Same about Congress. Same about any group. If everybody's in agreement, we don't need to have these meetings. But the reason we have the meetings is nobody has 100% lock on complete truth. So we need to discuss these things. We need to hear the different opinions and not try to completely silence one group. So I'm grateful for your work. What would you like for listeners to remember and what to check out on your that you have done?
Sure. So, I'm back on Twitter, so you can follow me at Alex Berenson. And I have this Substack, which, again, it's a newsletter. I write a few times a week, and you can join for free. Most people do join for free. There's also an option to pay, but frankly, I'm happier to have you as a reader, whether you pay or not. And so that's alexberenson.substack.com. It's called Unreported Truths, as you said. And then the book is Pandemia, which came out last year. And, it's funny, I've gotten some emails from people in the last just few days who said, you know what, I didn't read this when it came out. It was all sort of too fresh, but now I'm reading it, and it really like puts my life of the last of 2020 and 2021 in context. It helps remind me how crazy things got and that I wasn't wrong to stand up to that. So I'm really glad to hear from those people. So the book is called Pandemia, but really just don't stop thinking. We all have to be critical. We all have to be critical thinkers about this.
Yes. Well, we have got to go to a hard break. This is the Sean Hannity Show. Thanks to Alex Berenson for what he's been doing. And check him out, as he said. We'll be right back with more of the Sean Hannity Show.
Thanks.
You told Sean you need his insider updates straight from the source on today's big news. And Hannity gives you more every day. Sean Hannity.
This is the Sean Hannity Show. There's Louie Gohmert sitting in. We're going to Missouri to Jim. Jim, we got about a minute. Let us know what you think.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm enjoying your show. And I have an observation, and it goes like this. Thanks to our elite universities, evidence-based science has been turned upside down and replaced with political science. And that is not trivial because it reaches every corner of our society and every aspect of science. And political science is the polar opposite of real science. Yep. Political science seeks to dissuade, persuade, deceive, and dupe in opposition to all available evidence.
Well, especially when we get away from having people well-informed on what the issues are instead of being deceived. Great observation, Jim. Obviously, you're from the Show Me State, and thankfully, you demand to be shown the facts. More people need to do that. We need more people less reliant on the government. Do your own homework and then hold your government accountable. We're going to be right back, and you're going to love who's coming up. This is an FBI whistleblower attorney, and you need to hear what he's got to say. Come right back. The Sean Hannity Show.